Welcome, David Stradley, producing artistic director of Shakespeare, Delaware Shakespeare. Thanks for making the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Sharon.
Now, I think the Bard, who would be 437 years old right now, William Shakespeare, would be super proud of what you're doing. And your mission, if I may share it, is to envision a Delaware where people from all walks of life celebrate and explore their shared humanity through the lens of Shakespearean works. That was William Shakespeare's whole idea, yes?
We think so. Yeah. I mean, he certainly, in Elizabethan England, his audiences were, people think of Shakespeare and think it's only for the high and mighty, but his audiences in his time were made up of, every element of his society. And that's what makes his plays so exciting. And you have people from, as that mission says, people from all walks of life in the audience. It makes the plays perform in different ways.
And I was a theater major myself about 100 years ago. And I remember doing a few plays and the professor saying, look, in the times of Shakespeare, they'd be screaming and yelling and cheering and throwing things at the actors and, trying to shake it up as much as they could.
I could go for all that except the throwing stuff at the actors, but all the rest sounds great to me.
But I mean, challenging the norms also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he certainly would be familiar with creating art during times of pandemic as well. So I think he would understand what we're all going through right now.
Well, because these are short interviews, then let's cut right to the chase and talk about some of the things you've been doing while we are quarantining or distancing anyway. Specifically, the Race in Shakespeare production series. How wonderfully timely. What's that all about?
Yeah, like a lot of arts organizations, we initially were struggling with the pandemic. And then when the murder of George Floyd happened, a lot of us started looking internally and saying, how are we possibly contributing to this environment? And Delaware Shakespeare had already been traveling down some of those avenues, but we realized we could really step up. So we started actually very early. In early June, we did a discussion called Othello and Systemic Racism, and that was an online panel. That was very thought-provoking and interesting. And we wanted to kind of keep that conversation at the forefront for our audiences. I mean, it sadly seems already that the racial justice component has shifted off of being top of mind. So we had two panels, one called Color Blind versus Color Conscious Casting that happened in October, and then another one called Culturally Specific Shakespeare Production. So these are all
that's coming up November 23rd, so
yes.
Will be posted before that. What's that all about? How can people participate?
Yeah, so they're pay what you decide events. So you can go to our website, which is delshakes.org, and you can register for the Zoom webinar. You'll be sent a link automatically. It's free to register. And then after the event, you'll just get sent an email encouraging you, if you want to pay something for it, that you can. But yeah, culturally specific Shakespeare productions. So there's a long-standing tradition that Shakespeare productions will kind of wrap a concept around the play. A Wild West, Taming of the Shrew, Hamlet on the Moon. But there's also a tradition of non-white acting companies creating very specific cultural worlds around Shakespeare's plays. I mean, just within the last
and not just Othello.
Not just Othello, yes. So, last, or I guess 2 summers ago, Shakespeare in the Park in New York did a all-black Much Ado About Nothing. That was kind of set in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a big Stacey Abrams for 2020 for president banner on the set. And so when you start to explore other worlds for these plays, again, just different insights start coming to light. So we have a really great panel of, we have a Black theater artist, an Indigenous theater artist, a Latina theater artist, and an Asian theater artist, all talking about different productions that they have been part of that have put very specific cultural lenses around Shakespeare's plays.
And again, if folks go to your website, which we'll post under your image, they can register for free, participate, and then decide if they want to duck up a little something for the cause. You know, the pandemic has been brutal and continues to be brutal on particularly the performing arts. How are you guys managing?
We are keeping our heads above water and in some ways being more active than ever. I mean, we did have to postpone our two full productions. We normally do an outdoor summer production at Rockwood Park and then a fall community tour where we take Shakespeare on the road to homeless shelters and prisons and community centers. And both of those did not happen this year. But we started very, very soon into the pandemic saying, well, how can we still reach out and share with our audience? So we started what we called the Sonnet Project, where we, Monday through Friday, we were going to record one of Shakespeare's sonnets with an actor giving a little introduction to it. We thought maybe we'd have to do 30 or 40 of those. And sadly, last month, we finished all 154 of those sonnets. So we got through them all. We've also
Fantastic.
yeah, and it was really enlightening, and we were able to pay actors to do that, so it was keeping them engaged during a very challenging time for artists, and our audiences really loved hearing the insights that the actors shared as well as hearing the poems.
Big question. Who are your actors? You know, we have a pretty vibrant theater scene here in Delaware, and I know there's a lot of great music and musical theater. Shakespeare's a little different, a little tricky. Where do you find your actors? Who are they?
Yeah, so we like to consider ourselves part of the greater Philadelphia theater scene. So the large majority of our actors are professionals who are based in Philadelphia. We've also had some actors that we've worked with over the years that have moved on to New York or LA. And one of the fun things about the Sonnet Project is that we were able to reach out to some of them and say, hey, why don't you come back and share a sonnet? I know you're living in LA now, but that doesn't matter. So you can still share. And then we also had one of the fun things we did with the Sonnet Project was to get some community guests involved. So for instance, Reverend Edwin Estevez from Grace Church came on and did a sonnet. We had Kim Graham from Christina Cultural Arts Center share a sonnet. So it was a way to engage the community as well as artists.
But I know there are talented people in the Delaware area as well. We're not just the poor cousin of New York and Philadelphia. If people see this, David, and want to make themselves known to you, how does that work? Do you do open auditions? Is there an apprenticeship?
In a normal year, we normally in late December or early January do hold a kind of open audition where we put the word out and people can send in their resumes and come in and audition. We're probably not doing that this year because if we can produce next year, we kind of already have those productions cast, and so we don't like to do auditions if we don't have anything. But in a normal year, yeah, every December or January we hold an open audition, and literally any person that sends in a resume with a 302 area code, we automatically schedule, during those auditions.
Great. Now, I have to ask you, do you have a favorite piece?
Well, yes, that's why this was a particularly hard year for the pandemic to happen, because my favorite Shakespeare play is The Tempest, and I finally scheduled that to do this year, and I was going to direct it, and we had to postpone it
Oh,
this year.
no.
So that's one double reason why it was hard this year, because I was finally going to get to do my favorite Shakespeare play.
And one more question for you. Shakespeare sometimes is challenging to listen to. The language is very specific. Some would say antiquated. I remember I saw Alan Bates do Hamlet in London when I was a student many moons ago, and they kind of hipped it up, and it wasn't necessarily as effective, although he's a fabulous actor. Do you ever change the language, like, to make it more contemporary or colloquial?
99.8% of the time we keep the language as it is. I mean, we edit the plays, we get them down to about 2.5 hours. Every once in a while, there's just a word that literally its meaning has completely changed over the years, and we'll change that. But for the most part, we keep the language as it is. And I honestly think that a lot of times people just psych themselves up to think that they're not going to be able to understand Shakespeare. I mean, as I said at the beginning, for the last 4 years, we've been taking Shakespeare into homeless shelters and prisons and community centers. And those audiences have had a great time and followed the story. So I think, again, if you get good actors who are knowing what they're saying and reaching out and communicating with an audience, really anyone can get these plays and understand these plays, particularly if they're seeing them. Reading them's a different matter, but seeing them, it's a lot easier to follow.
Absolutely. You bring them to life, and the themes are completely universal and amazingly still timely, very timely. Well, we will look forward, I'll spread the word here, to Race in Shakespeare, cultural specific Shakespeare productions. It's a panel, it's a discussion, not a production. Correct. On November 23rd. And anything else you can give us a little hint about what's coming?
Well, we did, in addition to all the online stuff, this year we did 3 small-scale in-person productions, theater events. And we're hoping that we'll be able to go back and do our full productions next year. But if not, we'll still have some in-person events people can attend next year as well, done in COVID-safe manners. All
righty, I'll put a zipper on my mouth at this point and not talk about Richard III and how timely it might be, or King Lear, and I'll just say thank you, David Stradley, for the fabulous work you do, and I look forward to another conversation.
All right, thank you so much, Sharon.
All right, take good care.